Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. Ben Mankiewicz, it's Jason Rubin, Francis Maxwell. We're taping this on Monday. Obviously, the attacks in Paris now 3 days old. Francis, you wanted to sort of discuss what it means in the context of sports. Terrorism experts for some time. We've now heard a lot of them saying they've been saying it for some time, but many have. We've been reading about it. Hitting soft targets. Initially the thought was you go after the World Trade Centers, you bring down monuments, but the fact of the matter is those things are protected and harder to do, and nothing stops people from, well, not nothing, but almost nothing stops people determined to kill and willing to be killed from massacring people on a large scale, which is what many experts had feared for some time. Malls, restaurants, clubs, again, concerts. We saw it all happen here in Paris, and obviously, there are a few things that bring more people together in this country than sporting events, and that was one of the attempts here at the stadium in Paris.
Well, in amongst the disaster that went on, as the reports were furthered, that one of the suicide bombers was actually attempting to make it into the stadium to try and cause what was stated as obviously more disaster and more destruction, but also to cause chaos in amongst the stadium as a whole. So the one thing that has to be said about the French president is he was at the game, as he stated, when he started to find out more about these attacks, he wanted the game to continue so that he could therefore obviously preserve the fans who were within the stadium to remain in the stadium and not to cause any chaos for them to go outside to potentially cause further harm. I think that was a smart decision on his part to try and prevent any sort of chaotic rush of events. And we actually touched on this with Shane Faison, who's a YouTuber who talks about self-defense and things like that. I advise throughout this video to check out that video with him, because although you can't really understand these situations unless you're in one, he's trying to promote critical thinking in this, especially being in a mass crowd and things like that. So check out that. But to get back onto talking about the Stade de France, I think that that is something that has to be noted, is that one of these evil human beings was prevented from getting into the stadium, and obviously it was detonated his device before he, as soon as he was turned away according to reports. So what I want to talk about is that this is the kind of security measures that I think need to be installed throughout the sporting events. Obviously it will be, but more so leading up to the Euros 2016, because the Euros 2016 is taking place in France. It's the first sporting event that has, soccer event that has taken place in France since the 1998 World Cup. So there's going to be a lot of eyes. It's going to be a lot of people. It is a prime place. I'm not trying to instill fear, but it's a prime place.
I don't think you need to. I think everybody.
Yeah.
And we have to. I think, this is just my opinion, we have to find a way to persevere and live our lives as we would, recognizing that is part of our life now. That, in some ways we've adapted to it in America. 20 children get slaughtered in school and we move on and we do nothing about it.
Slightly numb to it.
Say what?
I say, it seems like we're slightly numb to it.
Yeah,
now.
It keeps happening again and again. This feels fresh. This feels different. And but we've experienced it here in the United States. And
it's not like and this is we're not focusing more so on football. This is TYT Sports, which obviously it's a topic that everyone wants to talk on. Is a lot of players involved, even on the field, were affected tragically, personally, with some of the family members. And Alassane Diarra, who's a French national, his cousin, unfortunately, was one of the victims in the attack. Antoine Griezmann, who plays for Atletico Madrid, his sister was involved in the attack, but thankfully she made it out safe. And it's as you said, Jason, we are somewhat numb to it, and I think in situations like that, when people bring that up, it's not just the innocent civilians. Everyone is involved in it in some way, and everyone needs to take notice to it. And the purpose, I think, of this clip is to bring up that, is that to tie back into what Shane was talking about in the previous clip, is that with increased security comes increased responsibility, I think, of everyone attending these games. And that's not in any way to kind of direct people to be observant of everyone and kind of go forth with profiling people and taking measures. But it has to be the idea that increased security means that everyone now, unfortunately, as you just mentioned, Ben, in the world we live in, need to be aware that this is a possibility that can happen anywhere. This isn't restricted to certain areas. This can happen in any phase of life, in any area.
Almost every terrorism expert thinks it's going to happen here. Somewhere in the United States. ISIS released a video today or yesterday saying that we're coming to Washington. And we don't know. We can't authenticate that video, and we don't know whether it's true. And it doesn't mean that they are. But of course, if you go after Paris, I mean, there's no. ISIS doesn't consider anybody a bigger threat to the caliphate than the United States.
Yeah.
Regardless of why you think that is, those are the current facts on the ground now.
I wanted to, at least in terms of like the community that sports create, because it's amazing when disasters happen, and I would classify this as a disastrous moment in the world. One of the things that, Ben, you might be able to touch on more, though, especially, I'm sure, from journalism school years ago, is proximity to an event. And one of the things that helps at least an understanding, and unfortunately sometimes very visual aspects of it, is social media, which I'll have many gripes about in general. But when you see the overwhelming amount of support from United States and their sports across all world sports. Granted, I focused, and as I was watching the NFL this weekend, as I was watching the NBA this weekend, French national flags were presented during almost every game. Moments of silence were presented during games. I think we have a couple pictures from it. The New York Knicks went as far to play the French national anthem before the United States national anthem in their game at Madison Square Garden. Players like Kevin Serafin, who come from French descent, Tony Parker, hashtag the Pray for Paris was trending, of course, all weekend. But I feel that one of the benefits from social media is that the proximity to an event has now become larger. Whereas if years ago, it would be unfortunately harder to sympathize or empathize with, and you can't really empathize because you can't be in their shoes exactly, barring what happened. But we are closer to the event, and not just we as in the United States. I mean, the world is closer to the event now.
Yeah, that's true. Social, I mean, again, there's plus and minuses to social media.
I think there's a lot of minuses. Yeah. I find that to be one of the pluses.
Yeah, that's a plus. I say this. I'm not interested in getting a lot of hate right now or venom, but I mean, as a people, and I'm aching for Paris, and it affected me just like it affected everybody else, and I feel connected to those people. They're from the West. Those are people more likely to live the life that I lead. Mm-hmm. But I think it's worthy that we all question a little bit why we care so much more about Paris than
over the other
than Beirut or Kenya or Tunisia earlier. That's where the beach was, right? In Tunisia, which was again an example of hitting a soft target. And I don't say this like therefore don't ache for Paris. I don't in any way. And I'm a hypocrite because I didn't have the same reaction to Tunisia and Beirut and Kenya and Boko Haram was attacking there that I do here. But I don't know. I'm spending a lot of time this weekend and talking to my wife about why we didn't have the same reaction. 82 to 97%, I just read this weekend, and I think it's closer to 97%, but 82 to 97% of ISIS's victims are Muslims. We shouldn't forget that. I don't. Our response, I hope, is smart, and I hope I don't hope it's aggressive. I just hope it's smart. If the smart thing is being aggressive, then I hope it's aggressive. But we just all ought to look at. It's great that the NBA plays the French national anthem, and that Paris is stitched into. But it's interesting. What does it say about us? Maybe nothing. I don't know. But I'm interested in that conversation, and it's one I'm at least having internally. I don't know whether anybody else is. I don't know whether everybody else has to.
It's the last point. It's what you were saying. I watched your clip on the main show, and you're talking about it. It's because we find a way to try and relate it back to our lives. So when you see something in a city that you've been in, like I've been in Paris, I was there in the summer. You naturally think to yourself, well, like I was there, I seen this. But if you're such as you're saying, like in Beirut or in other areas specifically that were involved in the same day with like awful attacks that happened, is like how you need to, people find a way to put themselves into that situation to sympathise and then to bring messages to it. So I agree that what I think that the sporting world does is it, as Jason was saying, it brings that message of community to try and help people feel less isolated and try and drive home a message that we stand together, which is, you can do it from across the world. We can do it here. We don't feel the same as those people directly affected in Paris or Beirut or anything else because we've not been in that situation. But I know that I read a bunch of messages from people that were involved in other chaotic instances where they stated that seeing social media come together and people unite helped give them strength.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing you can try and give at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And sports brings us together more often than it drives us apart. And that's certainly true. And I think that's a fair point to leave it on. Okay, thanks. Thanks for watching.